Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be working with some Hero Arts Summerween product, and we're making those two cards. I'm going to show you three cards that I made on a previous video in which I used the stamp sets from this collection, and I'm just going to kind of show you all of those, and I'll link that video up above here so you can check it out if you're interested. But today we're going to change the color scheme. We're going to bring in some traditional Halloween colors, and we're going to use the die set that's called Free Spirit, and we're going to use the die set that's called We All Scream, and we're also going to use the Flower Power stencil. And we're actually going to start off with our stenciling, so I'm going to bring in a very dirty sticky mat, and we are just going to get to stenciling on here. So have chosen some Halloween colors, and so what I'm going to bring in, I'm using my distressed oxides. That's what I use. I have got wilted violet that I'm using for the first layer, and I've zoomed in so that you can see it. Probably zoomed in too far, and it might be a problem for the rest of the video, but I started and stopped, so we probably will zoom out at some point. But I'm just laying down wilted violet, and that's going to be our first layer. And then I'm going to get our second layer laid down in there. And I marked up there because I didn't mark where my stencil was on the first one. I'm going to bring in Twisted Citron, and we're going to have green for our next layer and just get it laid down for our additional flowers that we've got on there. And then for our final, I'm going to bring in some carved pumpkin, and this will be the final layer of our flowers. And then our fourth stencil will be this floral centers, and I'm going to bring in black soot for that. And so we've got some really bright and fun colored flowers that I think really go along with kind of Halloween colors, and I'm just going to use the black soot and fill in the centers. I needed that fourth color and wasn't sure, and I thought, well, black is good to go. So I've got this strip here that I cut off the bottom of the other panel, and I'm just going to lay some of the ink down on there. We're going to do some die cutting on this panel. We're going to die cut some flowers and some sentiments. Oh, good. I did zoom out. When I'm keeping the kids, if I get a moment where everybody's napping or something like that, I will actually crank out part of a video, and then I'll have to stop and then get back to it later. And that's essentially what has happened. I was able to do my stenciling. Westy went with Pat to buy crickets because Pat was going fishing, and Gunner was engrossed in a little one of his little movies that he watches. He likes the little learning movies or videos, and he was watching that. And so I thought, well, I think I can get this stenciled while he was doing that. So that's what I did, and then I got done stenciling, and Pat had come back with Westy, and they had the crickets, and so I had to stop, and then really didn't get to do anything until the boys went home, and then after they went home, then I started doing the die cutting. And so I had started and stopped the camera, which was good since I was zoomed in too far. Anyway, I am die cutting some of the flower pieces out, and I am die cutting our sentiments out. Now, there are additional sentiments that are in the stamp sets, and I could have used them, but I didn't choose to do that. I used Hey Boo for both of the cards, and I'm just getting the back panels and then some of the flowers die cut out of this ink blended panel. And then I'll bring in some white, and we'll do some additional sentiments with white, and then the ink blended panel as well. So I'm just going to get all this die cutting out. And then once we get all of our pieces, we'll come back in and do our assembly of our card. And I have done a lot. Now you need your pokey tool for this. These dies, they get caught in there. So I took and I cleaned that off. I bumped the camera on the way out. So I'm going to bring my panel in. I've got all my little bits and pieces in this little glass dish. I'm going to cut this down. And it cut down to 4 by 5 1/4. And you can see I'm going right up next to the flowers on there. So if you want 4 1/4 by 5, you're going to have a white frame around it. It is really a fun stencil, and you wouldn't necessarily have to use it for Halloween. You could use it for a lot of different things, and you can use a lot of different colors. So I've got that panel ready, and I'm going to lay it on an A2 size card base and stare at it for a minute. And then I'm thinking, how can I make the most of this? Because I know I've got 2 cards in with the die cutting pieces that I've got. So I'm going to take this frame from Hero Arts. It is called the Squiggly Rectangular Frame Die Set, and I'm going to die cut out the squiggly frame, And then we'll have the inside piece. We've got the piece that I die cut it out, and then the squiggly frame. I'm going to use all of these pieces to the extent that I can. I'm going to take the squiggly frame and use it. I'm going to use the outer frame, and then I'm going to use a die. I'm going to bring in an A2 die for this. This is just a Spellbinders die, and die cut it out so I have a nice frame around it. The edge of that looks kind of strange, so I went ahead and die cut that, and I kept it. I kept everything. So I've got really 4 layers that I could use on a card. I'm going to use 3 of them. I'll lay one of them aside, and we're just going to create our 2 cards with this. So I'm going to get my squiggly frame laid down on my just white card base. I'm not even going to layer it with another panel. I'm going to lay it straight down on my card base. I've got some good heavy cardstock here, and we'll just get this squiggly frame laid down. And then we're going to actually insert the panel back in the middle of it, the one that I used the A2 Matting Basics, and just insert it. And then we'll just kind of have white, and then our flower power, and then white, and then our flower power stenciled panels. So I'm going to get that laid down in there, and it's kind of a fun design. Very, very simple, but we're going to use that. And for this, I'm going to bring in our ice cream die, and I have ink blended and die cut out the top of it, and then I've got some orange for the back, and then I just took some black strips for the eyes. I'm going to use this for the eyes of all of my ghosts, and this is a ghost popsicle. Now today the boys did have a type of popsicle. They actually had that flavor ice. They're actually a Skittles brand flavor ice. It's that little juice that is inside of the plastic packet that you freeze. They had some of that today as a little snack. They had asked for that. In fact, they had it right before they went home. So I'm going to get this is my handle to my ice cream there. And I got it laid down on there. And I think we've got some fun colors on here with the ink blending, and then the orange underneath there. We've got the black eyes. I am going to bring in my black pen here and try to make some eyelashes on here. I don't know. It didn't turn out as great as what I had in mind, but it'll work. I'm trying to kind of correct it here. And so we've given our little popsicle some eyelashes, and we're going to get it laid down on our flower power panel. And we've got a really fun, colorful, playful Halloween, Summerween card that we can use. I'll save these for Halloween for the grandkids. And I have used the ink blended Hey Boo and laid it on some white here. I've got multiple layers of the backer, the white backer, so we've got some good dimension there. And then I've got my Boo that I'm going to add to it, and we're just going to lay it right down on our popsicle. And this will be a cute little Halloween card for my grandkids and my nieces. And so we'll get that laid down on there. I think it's super cute. And then I'm going to bring in my glossy accents, and I'm just going to add some gloss to my eyes and just give them a little bit of shine. And then we'll lay it aside so that those will have time to dry, and hopefully I will not mess it up. So we'll just lay that aside. And we're going to go on to our second card. So for our second card, we're going to use these frames, and we're going to use the outside frame for it. And this was where I die cut the squiggly frame out of right here, and this was the remaining piece. And I'm just going to frame out this. We need a lot of white space because I'm going to bring in 2 of our ghosts for this, and so I needed a lot of space for it, so I'm just choosing to use this and just have a little floral border around the outside of our card. And then I've got that tray with all the little flowered pieces, and I've got my flowered ghost die cut out. I've got some peridot cardstock. I've got some, what is the purple? I don't know, from Spellbinders, and I've got carrot, I think, there. I've got a black piece that I'm putting behind the eyes, and I'm going to trim off. It was too long, and then we'll lay our purple on top of it. I'm going to use this black piece here that I cut off. It was enough to use for these eyes. And then we'll have the orange on there. And we're going to do some piecing with these. Now this purple one's going to be really simple. We're just going to piece the floral centers into it, and it'll go together pretty quickly. But then the orange one, I'm going to lay in the different floral elements, and it will take a minute. So I will speed it up as I do that, because it did take a good bit of time to get those pieces laid in there, because these flowers are not I don't know, symmetrical, the word. You have to roll them around and figure out which way they lie inside of these die cut pieces because they've got a different shape. Now, when I was wiggling that down there, I kind of got an interesting look on the eyes. So I'm trying to recreate it with my white jelly pen. I don't know if it was a success or a failure. You'll have to let me know what you think of it in the description box or in the comment box below. Now I'm just going to add a dot of white to the center of this purple one. I'm not trying to get fancy on this one. I'll have to go over the orange one's white of the eyes several times just to get it to fill in and make it look full with the white. So I'm going to dump all these flowers out, and we are going to get to assembling the flowers. So for the purple one, like I said, I'm just going to put some centers in there, and it'll go quickly. And I'm going to hang some over the edge because I'm going to fill them in, and then we'll just trim them off with our scissors, anything that's hanging over the edge. And I actually will do it when I get done with both of them because I want them to have time to dry so that when I snip those circle edges off, they won't slide off of there. I want them to be good and adhered. So I'll lay that aside. And now we're going to put all the different flower pieces. I'm going to inlay those on this, and then we'll add some centers to them. And this one's going to be really colorful because we're going to use all of our colors on it. And I just use the white piece behind it just to back it and give me a place to glue my flowers. And so I've sped this up, I think probably 7 times because I spent a good deal of time working these little flowers in there and getting them positioned. And I'm trying to scatter different colors around. I'm using the green and the purple on this because we've got the orange, and then we'll mix and match all of the centers. We'll use orange, green, and purple for the centers and mix and match them and get them laid down in there. And you can see I'm twisting and turning and trying to get the right ones fit in the right spot. And I can use some of the pieces that fell out of the purple on this, and I did do that in some instances because I had die cut it out with the purple as well, and I saved all of the bits and pieces that came out. So there we've got it all assembled. And I'm going to start with a purple one, allowing the orange one a little bit more time to dry. I'm grabbing my scissors, just flipping it off over and just trimming off these flower centers that are hanging off the edge there. And then that'll take care of it. I think it's super cute. Very, I don't know, is it 70s, the flower power? Maybe, I don't know, 70s or 80s, I don't know. Anyway, we'll trim all of these pieces off as well. And then we've got 2 really cute ghosts. I forgot this piece in the bottom, so I'll come back in and trim it off. So that white jelly roll pen that I had used on the eyes has had plenty of time to dry, so I'm going to come back in and go back over it and see if I can get a little bit more solid white on there to get my eyes to kind of look like what I want them to look like on this particular ghost. And I think it's a cute look. If I could just get the jelly roll to fill in real nice and neat. So I'm going to figure out how to position these 2 on here. I think I'm going to put the purple one on the bottom, and then we'll pop the orange one up, and just still playing with it, trying to figure it out. And then we'll add our Hey Boo to this, and then we've got lots of extra flowers over there. We've got some larger ones, and we'll be able to add those, and it will make this card look a little bit more interesting since we've got a lot of white space there. So I did have a viewer comment on one of my videos that they liked my card, but they really weren't in a Christmas mood yet. And so I thought, let's just do something a little bit different today and do the Summerween and play with this again, because I had not worked with the die sets yet. So this gave me an opportunity to just pull it out again and work with it. So I've got my 2 ghosts positioned on there. How I'm thinking I want them. I'm going to get my Hey Boo. I've got the shadow in the ink blended panel, and I've got the letters in the white, and so we just need to layer them up. I haven't layered these up yet, or glued these 2 together. I do have multiple layers of white that I'm laying on that ink blended shadow, and I've already got them glued, but I need to get it laid down on my shadow, and I'll need to do that for my Hey and for my Boo. And just trying to clean up any little bits of glue there. And then we'll get our BOO laid down on there. The Hey is connected, the Boo is separate, so we've got 3 little pieces there. We're going to get them lined up on our little shadowed. And I tried to make sure I had plenty of room at the top of my card base so that I could get my sentiment laid down in there. And so I'm pulling these up here close where I can see and shifting them to where we get a nice little frame around the B. And I'll do the same thing with the O's and get them laid on there carefully. So tonight was the last night of VBS, and they actually were feeding the VBS workers. And I know I've shifted gears there, sorry. If you watch my videos, you've been hearing the progression of VBS. Anyway, tonight's the last night they were feeding the workers. And this morning I got up and I was trying to be very efficient. And so I put food in the crock pot, and then later I remembered that they were feeding the VBS workers. And I was like, you know what? I'm really tired tonight. I'm not going tonight, and I'm just going to eat the food that is in my crock pot. What I was doing was the registration for the new kids that were coming in. And I'm thinking tonight's the last night, probably not going to have any new kids, so they're not really going to need me. The pastor was doing the computer work, and I was just kind of doing some of the handwriting and just greeting and stuff like that and getting the tags. And I think they probably did not need me tonight, and so I did not feel bad about that. I really didn't have an assignment other than the decorating for it, so I just offered to help with the registration just because they were a little short-handed, but anyway, so I decided to stay home. I thought I would do this voiceover and waiting for Pat to get home from fishing, and we have got some beef and potatoes and carrots in the crock pot, and it smells delicious, and I'm actually going to even add some egg noodles to broth, and we're going to have that. So it's going to be a high carb filled diet tonight, which is very unusual for me. So I'm going to bring these flower elements back in. I'm using the bigger ones, and I'm going to try and position them on here and just kind of fill in some of that white space. And I think it helps pull it together, and it adds some extra dimension because I'm popping them up. What I'm doing is putting the foam tape on the back of the flowers, and then I can just stick the centers right in there on the foam tape. Don't have to add any glue for that. And I'm going to bring in a smaller one. I've got two of the large ones. I'm going to bring in the medium-sized one in purple and lay it up there with the big ones. And then we'll bring in two smaller ones to put on the other side, and it'll just fill it in nicely. So I'm going to cut one of my foam squares down because it's too big for my medium-sized and my small flowers. And I'll just pop it up, and then we'll add a center to it. I'm trying to mix and match the centers with it and get them laid down on there. So my sister sent me a text and said, hey, just reminding you that they are feeding the VBS workers tonight. And I said, I know. And I told her the story that I put stuff in the crock pot before I remembered that they were serving and that I wasn't coming. And then on top of that, my mom texted me and said, hey, if you haven't got anything cooked yet, I'm just pulling a meatloaf out of the oven, and we'd love to have you come over for dinner. So I had to go through that whole story with her again and said, I'm just staying home and eating my food that I had in the crock pot. And she said, well, I've also made a cake for your dad, so if you want to have some dessert later, you can come over for that. So I had plenty of opportunities for food tonight. So anyway, we'll get back to the card. So I'm just going to bring in another flower, and I'm going to position it here with the other one. I want to have the odd number of flowers. I've got 3 on one side, 2 on the other, and we're just going to do the same thing with the foam, and we're going to get this last one laid on there. And I think this is really, the flowers have really helped pull this particular card together. And I've got the purple fingernail polish on. I paused yesterday and painted my fingernails again, and so I've got some purple fingernail polish on here to kind of, it's not the same color, but it kind of coordinates nicely with my card. And I thought about putting it up, and then I thought, no, I want to layer it down here, and so we're just going to layer these two together. And so I'll just get all of this mess cleaned up off my desk. We'll come back in and take a look at our 2 cards. I think they're super fun, and I've got them in my stash for Halloween. So if you're new here and you like this type of card making content, I have linked a playlist so that you can check out additional inspiration from my channel. Thanks for watching.